Title: I'm a janitor at an abandoned prison. The inmates are still there. Part 1, the first shift. Introduction. I always thought ghosts were just stories. Whispered rumors, flickering shadows. Things made up to scare children or fill horror books. But when you're mopping blood that shouldn't be there, hearing chains rattle in empty hallways, and seeing faces that shouldn't exist behind rusted bars, you start questioning everything you ever believed. My name is Mark Linton. I took a janitorial job at Hollow Creek Penitentiary, a prison decommissioned 20 years ago. The paycheck was good. Too good. Now I know why. I wasn't hired to clean the place. I was hired to feed it. The job listing was vague. Overnight janitorial work, temporary assignment, hazard pay included. I didn't ask questions. I needed the money. A man from the contracting company met me outside the prison gates at 9 p.m. sharp, handed me a ring of keys, a flashlight, and a laminated map of the facility. I won't lie to you, Mark, he said. His eyes didn't meet mine. No one's lasted more than a week. Some don't even make it through the first night. I laughed, thinking he was joking. What? The ghost's too messy for them. He didn't laugh back, just climbed into his truck and drove off, tires spitting gravel in the moonlight. The gates groaned open like a dying animal. The place reeked of rust and mildew, with ivy crawling up the stone walls like fingers trying to escape. The main entrance yawned wide in front of me. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was thick and cold, not like regular cold, but the kind that gnaws at your bones, the kind that feels like it doesn't belong. Dust danced in the beam of my flashlight. My footsteps echoed with unnatural volume, bouncing off the peeling concrete walls. I started in the administrative block, just like the map suggested. The floor was covered in grime and shattered glass, as if someone had taken a sledgehammer to every window. I mopped, swept, wiped away cobwebs. The usual. For an hour or two, everything was fine. Then I heard it. A voice. Barely a whisper. Mark. I froze. The flashlight flickered. I whipped around, expecting to see someone behind me, maybe a security guard playing tricks. But the hallway was empty, dead silent again. My heart thudded in my chest, loud enough to drown out my thoughts. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe the mind plays tricks when you're alone in a place like this. I pressed on, muttering reassurances to myself, finishing the admin block, then moving toward the cell wings. Cell block C was my next target. According to the map, it was one of the oldest wings, shut down decades before the prison closed. As I approached, I noticed something strange. The air grew colder. The lights flickered more frequently, casting long, twitching shadows across the walls. The cell doors were all closed, rusted shut, I assumed, until I passed by cell number 37. It was slightly ajar. That wasn't on the map. Inside, the mattress was torn apart, the walls scratched up with tally marks. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, sprawled in patterns that made my skin crawl. I backed away, heart racing. I turned to leave and saw a shadow at the end of the corridor. It wasn't moving, just standing there. Who's there? I called, trying to sound braver than I felt. No response. I shined my flashlight on it, and the beam passed right through. I stumbled backward, falling against the wall. The air knocked out of me. When I looked again, the shadow was gone. My flashlight flickered and died. I slammed it against my hand, panicking in the dark. That's when the whisper came again. Mark, you shouldn't be here. I bolted, running blind down the hallway, guided only by memory and the map in my pocket. I didn't stop until I reached the janitor's closet in the admin wing. I slammed the door, locked it, and collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed different in there. I eventually convinced myself I'd imagined it all. Maybe it was mold messing with my head. Maybe I was just tired. I opened the door and peeked out. Silence. I stepped back into the corridor and froze. Wet footprints trailed down the hall, starting from the janitor's closet and disappearing around the corner. I hadn't stepped in anything, and these weren't mine. I followed them cautiously, drawn more by dread than curiosity. They led to the mess hall. The double doors were slightly open, swinging ever so gently. I pushed them open. Inside, tables were overturned, chairs scattered across the floor. The place looked like a riot had just ended. Then I saw it, etched into the center of the floor, written in something dark and glistening. "You don't belong here." I turned to leave and heard the cell doors start slamming one by one in the distance. Bang, bang, bang. The sound echoed down the halls like gunshots, each one closer than the last. I ran again, this time to the warden's office. According to the map, it had a landline. Maybe I could call the contractor. Maybe I could just scream until someone heard me. The door to the office was locked, but one of the keys on the ring worked. I stumbled inside, slamming the door behind me. Dust coated every surface, but the room looked untouched otherwise. A dusty phone sat on the desk, and to my surprise, it had a dial tone. I quickly called the only number I had, the contractor's. It rang once, twice, then someone picked up. "Don't leave," said a voice I didn't recognize. It was gravelly, broken, like it hadn't been used in years. "They've been waiting for you, Mark." Click. The line went dead. Then the door handle started to turn. I backed away, hard in my throat. The handle shook violently, and something began pounding on the door harder and harder until the frame splintered. I looked around, desperate for an escape. There was a small closet in the corner. I dove in and shut the door just as the main office door burst open. Footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Whatever, it was inside. I held my breath, barely daring to blink. The closet door creaked open an inch. Then another. Then it slammed shut again. Silence. I stayed in that closet until the sun started to rise. When I finally came out, the office was empty again. No signs of forced entry. The desk, the phone, everything was back in place, as if nothing had happened. I walked to the exit in a daze, expecting the gates to be sealed, or worse, to see more of them waiting for me. But the gate stood wide open, bathed in morning light. I left without looking back. But I came back the next night. Not because I'm brave. Not because I want to. Because something inside Hollow Creek won't let me go. And worse, I think I'm starting to understand why. Conclusion. That was only the first night. The beginning of a job I never should have accepted. The prison may be abandoned, but the inmates, they're still there. And they've been waiting for someone like me. The second night, that's when things got worse. That's when they started talking to me, watching me, following me, and I think they remember who they were. They know my name. The second night, I arrived at Hollow Creek with a backpack full of supplies, more flashlights, extra batteries, a pocket knife I barely knew how to use, and a notebook to document anything strange, as if proof would help, as if someone would believe me. The sun dipped below the trees as I stepped through the rusted gates again. The air smelled worse than before, like decay layered over rot. Something had shifted. The silence wasn't just absence. It was expectation, like the whole building was holding its breath, waiting. I walked down the same corridor as the night before, passing the empty watch station and the torn-up reception desk. As I turned toward the janitor's closet to stash my bag, I saw it, scratched into the wall, deep and jagged. Mark, not spray-painted, not written with a marker, etched, with claws maybe, or fingernails. I froze. The scratch marks trailed downward, as if whatever made them had dragged its hand all the way to the floor. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to acknowledge it. But I couldn't look away. Behind me, the sound of breathing, wet and rasping. I spun around, flashlight beam darting across the walls. Empty, but the breathing didn't stop. It grew louder, closer, then gone, like someone had held a pillow over a dying mouth and ended it. I should have left, right then, but something tugged at me deep in my gut. Curiosity, maybe, or the prison itself. I started my route again. Cell block C first. The doors that were rusted shut the night before were wide open now, every single one. The cells were empty, beds stripped bare, but that wasn't what chilled me. On each wall, drawn in charcoal or soot, was a face. Dozens of them, some smiling, others screaming. some with hollow black holes where eyes should be. They looked unfinished, rushed, like they had been drawn by a frantic hand. And they were all looking at me. A whisper slid down the corridor like a draft. "We know you now." I backed away and moved to cell number 37, the one that was half open before. It was shut this time, completely sealed. But the tally marks were still there, now spreading outside the cell and along the hallway wall. The marks ended just beside a new word. Tonight. That was all. Just that word, written in what looked like something darker than charcoal. I turned and nearly collided with a figure at the end of the hall. It was a man, tall, gaunt, wearing a prison uniform so old and faded the numbers were unreadable. His face was wrong, asymmetrical, one side twisted in a sneer, the other emotionless, and his eyes, one white, one black, locked onto mine. "You cleaned their mess," he rasped, voice brittle as old paper. "Now they want you to finish it." "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. He didn't answer, just turned and walked away through the wall. The air snapped back like a rubber band. I staggered backward, breathing hard. My flashlight flickered and died again. I had checked the batteries. They were new. I made it back to the janitor's closet, hands trembling as I rummaged through my bag for another light. When I flipped it on, the beam hit the far wall, and my breath caught. A photo, pinned there, one I had never seen before. It was me, standing outside Hollow Creek, taken from behind as I opened the gate on the first night. Someone or something had been watching me from inside. The tape on the back held it in place, but the corners were curling, stained with something that looked like blood. Below the photo, written in small, perfect handwriting, "He belongs to us now." I didn't sleep that day. Couldn't. I paced my apartment until sunset, then drove back, unable to stop myself. This time, the gate didn't creak. It swung open like it was expecting me. Inside, the prison was alive. Not with people, not with movement, but with energy, thick, choking, electric, like walking into a room right after someone screamed. The mess hall lights were on. All of them. I hadn't touched the breakers. Curiosity got the better of me again. I pushed open the doors and found the tables neatly arranged. Plates set out, cutlery placed perfectly beside rotted food, like they were expecting dinner. At the head of the room, where the warden might have once stood, sat a figure. I approached slowly, heart thudding. It was a dummy, or a corpse. I wasn't sure. It wore a suit, and its head was a burlap sack tied with wire. A paper pinned to its chest read, "Feed U.S." The lights cut out. The door slammed shut. I was plunged into blackness, and in that instant, I heard the sound of dozens of feet, bare, dragging across linoleum, breathing, gurgling, a giggle that turned into a scream. My flashlight sputtered on. Every table was now surrounded. Figures sat in silence, prisoners in various states of decay, some skinless, some eyeless, some gnashing teeth they didn't have, all frozen in place, heads slowly turning toward me. They didn't move. Not yet. Then one stood. He pointed to the dummy and whispered, "Your turn." I ran again, down corridors that stretched too long, up staircases that hadn't been there before. Doors led to brick walls. Every path looped back to cell block C, like the place was folding in on itself. And then I found the warden's office again. It was clean, pristine. The desk was polished, the floor mopped, photos on a wall of inmates in uniforms, their faces blurred, and a book, huge, leather-bound, on the desk, open to a page with my name. Mark Linton, janitor. Replacement. Replacement for what? I slammed the book shut. Dust exploded from its spine. The door creaked behind me. I turned, but no one was there. The hallway was empty, except for one thing. My flashlight caught it as I stepped out. Another janitor's uniform, folded neatly on the floor. A name tag sewn on the chest. Dale. That was the name of the guy I replaced. I'd never met him. The contractor just said he didn't last. The collar was soaked in blood. When I lifted it, a note fluttered to the floor. It starts with cleaning, ends with keeping them company. I heard the cell doors start slamming again. This time, I didn't run. I walked toward the sound, heart hammering, toward cell number 37. It was open now, waiting. I stepped inside. The tally marks were gone, but the walls were still scratched. Deep gouges, claw marks. I heard the door slam shut behind me. I didn't panic, because somehow I knew it wasn't locked. Not yet, but I also knew one thing for certain. They wanted me here, and they weren't finished with me. Not even close. Whispers in the pipes. I didn't sleep again. Not because I was scared, though I was, but because I could still hear them. Even after I left Hollow Creek that night, the whispers followed me. In my car, I heard them through the vents. At my apartment, the pipes groaned like voices trying to form words. And in the dead silence between midnight and dawn, when I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, the sound would rise up from the walls like something alive was crawling behind them. I couldn't stay away. I tried. I called out sick. I told myself I was done. But around sunset, I found myself in my car, driving toward that place again with no memory of grabbing the keys. When I stepped through the gates, the wind pushed against me like it was trying to keep me out. That was new. Until now, the place wanted me there. But this time, something had changed. There was hesitation. I followed the corridor towards cell block B. I hadn't been there yet. Something told me that's where I'd find answers. The second I opened the corridor door, a gust of stale, wet air hit me. The smell of sewage, copper, and something fouler. I turned on my flashlight and stepped into a hallway that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Peeling walls, rusted bars, water dripping from broken pipes. And that's when I heard it. A whisper, not from the cells, from inside the pipes. It was soft, like someone talking through clenched teeth. I stepped closer to a rusted valve on the wall and pressed my ear against the cold metal. Mark. I jumped back. I hadn't imagined it. It said my name, clearly. Then another voice joined it. Then another, dozens, maybe hundreds, all speaking in unison to the building's veins. Come below? I didn't know what they meant until I saw the grating in the floor, a drainage cover, half pried open. I knelt down and aimed my flashlight into the hole. The light caught movement. Hands, just fingertips, curling along the edge of the pipe, pulling back into the dark like spiders scuttling into crevices. Jesus, I whispered, stumbling back. The pipe moaned again, and then I heard it. Footsteps above me, slow, deliberate, coming from the upper tier of cell block B. But when I aimed my light upward, no one was there. Until they were. A man stood directly across the block, on the top tier. No flashlight, no sound, just standing watching. He stepped forward. The boards under his feet creaked, and he fell straight through the floor. There was no scream, no crash, just silence. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, impossibly, I heard the same footsteps again, back on the walkway, like he'd never fallen. I turned and walked fast. Not quite a run. I didn't want to see what was following me. My flashlight flickered, but held. As I neared the end of the hall, I saw a sign, Boiler Access, Basement Level. That's what they meant. Come below. I shouldn't have gone down there, but I did. The basement door groaned open like a scream in slow motion. The stairs were slick with moisture, and the walls were weeping some kind of thick black sludge that pulsed when I passed. I reached the bottom and entered a chamber of rusted machinery and broken pipes. The air was warmer, humid, and the whispers were louder here, angrier. In the far corner was a hatch, iron, locked with a massive wheel, the kind you'd see on a submarine. Carved around the frame were words, etched deep in the metal. Silence is the only escape. I didn't open it. I couldn't. Something inside was moving, slithering. The hatch thudded once. Then again, something behind it wanted out. Instead, I turned and found a desk. A rusted file cabinet sat beside it, and one drawer hung open. Inside, a folder labeled, Janitorial Logs, Dale W. I pulled it out, hands trembling, and read. The entries started normal. Shift reports. Maintenance issues. Then things got weird. April 3rd. Cell number 37 keeps opening. Tried to report it. No response. April 6th. Saw someone in the mirror again. Looked like me, but bleeding from the eyes. April 10th. I think the inmates are still here. Not alive. Not dead. April 12th. They want me to hear them. The pipes never stop whispering now. April 14th. I made a mistake. I opened the hatch. That was the last entry. I backed away from the desk, heart pounding. Above me, I could hear footsteps again. Not one set. Many. Pacing. Stomping. Like a riot without voices. And then the pipes began to scream. They didn't whisper anymore. They wailed. The sound pierced through my ears, like metal grinding against bone. I clutched my head and ran back up the stairs, but the lights burst above me one by one. Piopi, piopi, pop. By the time I reached the top, everything was dark, except the corridor. It was lit, but not with electricity. The floor glowed, dimly, a pale, sick green light. I walked forward slowly, watching as words began forming under my feet, appearing with each step like heat rising from asphalt. You heard U.S. Now see. A door opened ahead. The solitary confinement wing. I'd avoided it on purpose. Now it was inviting me in. The cells in solitary were tiny, windowless, each one colder than the last. The first was empty. The second had writing on the walls in blood. Light hurts them. The third cell had something inside, hunched in the corner, breathing shallow and quick. I stepped closer. My flashlight beam hit its back. It flinched, then it turned around. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin stretched too tight across a round, bald head. And yet it screamed, a sound that didn't come from a mouth, but from everywhere. The walls shook. My ears bled. I dropped my flashlight and bolted, the beam bouncing wildly before dying behind me. I didn't stop running until I was outside. I collapsed just past the gates, gasping. The air out here felt clean, cold, almost normal. But before I stood, I noticed something. On the ground, just outside the fence. A boot print, large, barely pressed into the dirt. It wasn't mine. It was pointed toward the prison, not away. I looked up and saw someone watching me from the top window of cell block B. No eyes, just smooth, pale skin, still screaming, but now only in my mind. The ones in the walls. I didn't go home that night. I drove aimlessly, turning corners I didn't recognize, passing streets that didn't exist on any map. My mind was unraveling. I kept hearing the scream in my head, like a blade scraping across my skull. Even when the car radio was off, static came through the speakers in bursts, and sometimes, just under the white noise, I'd hear whispers. Not just any whispers. Voices saying my name, over and over. When I finally pulled into a motel off the highway, I locked the door, drew the blinds, and collapsed on the bed fully clothed. But even then, I couldn't rest. I felt like the walls were watching me, breathing. Every creak in the room sounded like someone shifting behind the drywall. I left before sunrise. The strange thing is, I don't remember deciding to go back. 1 second I was on the highway. The next, I was walking to the gates of Hollow Creek again. Keys in hand, uniform on, like I never left. This time, everything was quiet, too quiet. Not peaceful, wrong. As if the prison was holding its breath. I stepped through the front office, and the reception phone was off the hook, the receiver swinging gently like someone had just put it down. The calendar on the wall still said 1976. I reached to flip it, but the paper crumbled beneath my fingers like dried leaves. As I walked the halls, I noticed the air had changed. It was thicker, humid, the kind of atmosphere that makes your skin itch. The lights overhead flickered like they were fighting to stay alive. A pipe hissed somewhere behind the wall. Then I heard it, the tapping, rhythmic, 1 2 1 2 3, coming from inside the walls. I placed my hand on the concrete, and it was warm. Then it throbbed. I stumbled back as the surface of the wall seemed to pulse, like it was flesh. I didn't imagine it. I saw veins dark and bulging, pulsing under the surface. And the tapping was growing louder, faster. Then came the voices, dozens of them, whispering in unison. The walls remember. They remember what happened here. They remember you. That last part froze me. Me? I wasn't part of this place. Was I? I backed into the stairwell, away from the breathing walls, and nearly tripped over something lying on the floor. A uniform. Old. Faded. Covered in dry blood. And stitched on the chest was a nameplate. Marked W. My name, but not my uniform. Not one I'd ever worn. Inside the pocket, there was a folded, water-damaged photo. A man who looked exactly like me, standing in front of the prison gates, smiling with his hand on the shoulder of another janitor. The back read, Markendale, 1967. I was born in 1986. I dropped the photo. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip my flashlight. I needed air. I needed to leave. But then I heard it again. That scream. Not from inside my head this time, but echoing down the hallway like a chorus of tortured souls had all taken a breath together and screamed as one. And something was coming. Footsteps. Heavy. Wet. Slapping the floor as if the skin of their feet had peeled away. I bolted. Ran down a corridor I didn't recognize. Past cell doors that looked welded shut. Their windows covered in dried, blackened handprints. Then I saw it. A figure crouched in the hallway. Back to me, muttering softly. It was rocking, whispering, the same phrase over and over. They never left. They never left. They never left. I should have turned around, but something compelled me forward. I called out, voice barely audible. Hello. The figure stopped rocking. Its head twisted unnaturally, not turned, twisted, until its face was staring at me upside down. Its mouth hung open in a scream that made no sound. Its eyes were gone, just empty sockets leaking thick black fluid. I screamed and turned back, but the hallway behind me was gone. Just bricks. Solid wall, like the prison had changed its layout behind my back. Trapped again. I had no choice. I ran past the creature as it lurched to its feet, clawing the air. Its fingers were too long, too thin, scraping the walls as it followed. I found a stairwell that led down, deeper, into places no map covered. It was darker here. The light from my flashlight only went a few feet ahead before being swallowed by the void. The walls were slick, covered in a black, mossy film that pulsed like it was alive. Then I heard voices again. Clearer now. Not whispers. Memories. I didn't kill her. They lied about the evidence. They burned me alive. This place keeps us. Each voice came from a different crack in the wall, like the souls of the inmates were embedded in the stone, reliving their final moments forever. I reached the chamber, larger than any cell block I'd seen. In the center was a pit, an old, rusted elevator shaft. Chains hung from the ceiling, swinging even though there was no wind. I looked down into the shaft, and something looked back. 2 red eyes, deep below, glowing in the darkness. Then the chains began to rattle, violently. I turned to run, but the floor cracked beneath me, and I tumbled into a side room. My flashlight shattered. Darkness swallowed me whole. But in that blackness, I could feel them, moving around me, brushing my skin, whispers right beside my ear. You belong here. You were always here. Something touched my face. Cold, wet, fingertips pressing into my cheeks like it was trying to remember my shape. I screamed, lashing out in the dark. My hand hit something solid. A switch? I flipped it. A light bulb flickered to life above me, weak and dying, but enough to chase away the shadows. I was alone, or so I thought. On the wall in front of me were photographs. Old prison staff, janitors, cooks, guards, and among them me, standing beside Dale, smiling, same face, same eyes, but the photo was dated 1966, and under was a nameplate, Mark Whitmore, Maintenance, 1965 to 1971. I staggered back, try to understand what I was seeing. Was I him? A reincarnation? A memory? Or something worse? Suddenly, the floor groaned beneath me in a voice, not a whisper, but a booming, guttural growl. rose from the very foundations of the prison. You never left. The walls began to close in, not metaphorically, literally. The bricks groaned and shifted, tightening the room. Pipes burst. Steam hissed. The walls bled. I ran to the door, but it had disappeared. Just more wall. I was being entombed, buried alive. I screamed, pounded the wall with bleeding fists. Then, silence. Total, impossible silence. No whispers, no screams. Just me, breathing, alone. The walls stopped. They let me go. I stumbled out into a hallway I recognized. The front entrance. Morning light peeked through the cracked glass. Had I been down there all night? I didn't question it. I ran, didn't look back, didn't speak. But as I passed the exit doors, I caught my reflection in the glass. It was me, but not me. My skin was pale, eyes sunken, and for a moment, I didn't see myself move. But my reflection smiled. The reflection room. I didn't sleep again. Not after what I saw in that glass. Not after my reflection smiled without me. Every mirror, every window, every puddle on the street since that night has shown me something wrong. I'll glance at my reflection, and it stares too long, moves a second late, smiles when I don't, and sometimes it mouths words I can't hear. I avoided my apartment. Didn't want to be surrounded by glass. I lived out of my car, barely eating, barely thinking. But the prison, Hollow Creek, never left me. It was under my skin now, in my blood, and something deep inside knew. I wasn't finished there. I had to go back. I waited until the moon was full. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping the light would protect me. Maybe I wanted to see everything clearly this time. Either way, I drove to Hollow Creek with the windows down, hoping the cold wind would keep me from trembling. When I stepped inside, the air welcomed me. That same thick, warm breath in the lungs of a building long dead but never buried. I wasn't surprised to find the hallway different again. Doors where there hadn't been doors. The floor sloped now, like the prison had sunk into the earth even more. I passed familiar rooms, now twisted. The break room? Gone. In its place, a mirror-lined hallway with flickering candles that hadn't burned out. And I saw myself in every pane of glass. But not me. Not anymore. My reflection was tired of pretending. It looked healthier than me. Stronger. Confident. It walked straighter. Stood taller. And when I stopped, it didn't. It kept going down the hallway. Without me, I turned to run. And slammed into a wall of mirrors. No doors. No way out. Just 100 versions of myself staring back. Except they weren't all me. Not exactly. Some had scars I didn't. Others grinned with cracked, blackened teeth. A few bled from the eyes, or mouthed silent screams. And one, God help me, one was hanging, swinging slowly from a noose that wasn't there. They started moving, not physically, but they all turned toward me, every single one. All their eyes locked onto mine. And then they whispered, Mark, over and over, a rising chant. Mark, 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 Mark. I backed away, slamming my fist against the glass. No cracks, no give, just cold reflection. Then they began to change. One by one, their faces melted, literally sliding down their mirror frames, revealing faces underneath. Inmates. Dead ones. The one with the missing jaw from D Block. The woman with eyes burned shut. The man I'd seen crawling across the floor in part 2, whose intestines dragged behind him like a leash. They were all there, behind the glass, watching, waiting. Then the middle mirror rippled like water. A pale hand reached through. Then another. Then a face. My face. But wrong. Its smile stretched too wide. Its skin bubbled like it had been boiled. It stepped through the glass like it was parting curtains. I was frozen. It reached for me slowly, fingers trembling in excitement. And it spoke, not aloud, but in my head. You've walked my halls. You've breathed my air. You carry the rot now. Let me in. I screamed and turned, but the mirrors were behind me too. I was surrounded. The thing lunged, its hands wrapped around my neck, and suddenly I wasn't in the hallway anymore. I was back, in the janitor's closet, mop in hand, clock ticking on the wall. Normal, safe, for half a second. Then the mirror on the door began to bleed. Thick, dark crimson poured from the glass, dripping to the floor like it was leaking from another world. My reflection was still there, but it was choking, like I had been a moment ago. Its eyes rolled back. Its body twitched, and then dead still, but the blood kept flowing. I opened the door, and the hallway was wrong again, different than it had ever been. It wasn't a prison anymore. Not fully. It was part hospital, part asylum, part house. Pictures hung on the walls. Family photos. Me, smiling with people I don't remember. A woman. 2 kids. Was I losing my mind? Or were these fragments of another me? Each step I took felt heavier, like gravity increased with each footfall. I was being pulled into the floor. The lights flickered until they just stopped, and I stood in darkness, until one light came on. Ahead, a single bulb swinging over a wooden chair, and sitting in that chair, Dale, the janitor I'd worked with, the one I saw die, but he looked alive, calm, smiling gently. "Hey, Mark," he said, like nothing had happened. "Where have you been?" I wanted to scream, cry, run, but I walked forward like I was being pulled. "You didn't think you'd really get away, did you?" Dale asked. I stammered. "You're dead." He shrugged. "So are you? You just haven't figured it out yet." My blood ran cold. "I'm not." "Not what? Not one of them?" "Mark, you've been part of this place since the doors opened. Since before that, even, this building doesn't hold spirits." He leaned forward. "It makes them." I shook my head violently. No, I'm alive. I left. I remember leaving." "Sure," he nodded. "You remember a lot of things. But think about it. When's the last time you saw daylight that didn't come through cracked glass? When's the last time you touched anyone?" I couldn't answer, because I didn't remember. "I know it hurts," Dale said softly, "but you belong here. Always have. Just accept it. Step through." He gestured behind him. The mirror was there again, rippling, calling, and I saw myself in it, smiling again, but not forced this time, peaceful, and for a moment I wanted the pain to end, the fear, the confusion, but then the lights flickered again, and I saw them, all the others, standing in the dark just beyond the glow, dozens, hundreds, dead inmates, dead guards, dead janitors, all watching, waiting. They needed me to step through because they needed someone else to take their place. I took a step back. Dale frowned. "That's not how this works." The walls around us pulsed, angrily. The light overhead burst, showering us in sparks. And the mirror screamed. Not a sound, but a feeling, like claws in my chest, like knives in my spine. I turned and ran. This time, I didn't look back, and the hallway collapsed behind me with each step. I burst through the front doors, and the night greeted me. Cold, real, empty. I was outside, for the first time in, I don't know how long. I gasped for air, collapsed on the sidewalk. Above me, the stars blinked gently, and for once, my reflection in the window beside the door didn't move. It just stared, trapped, and I whispered to it, "Stay there. Cell number 0. I should have stayed away." I told myself that over and over in the weeks that followed. After I left Hollow Creek that night, I quit everything. I moved back in with my brother. Tried to live like I had before. I deleted the photos, burned the uniform, even smashed my phone when it started ringing at 3:13 a.m. every night. But it didn't matter, because Hollow Creek hadn't let go of me. I'd hear footsteps in the hallway when no one else was home. I'd catch glimpses of figures in reflective surfaces. Sometimes I'd wake up with dirt under my nails and no memory of how it got there. My brother found me sleepwalking in the garage one night, talking in my sleep, repeating a number, 0, 0, 0. I didn't know what it meant. Not yet. Then one night, I woke up in bed, completely drenched in cold sweat. Not unusual. But something was off. My feet were muddy, like I'd walked through soil. And there was something clutched in my left hand. A key. Old. Rusted. And tagged with metal plate that read, Cell 0. I hadn't brought it with me. I hadn't stolen anything from Hollow Creek. Or hadn't meant to. I should have thrown it away. Tossed it in a lake. But instead, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it for hours. Cell 0. I had never heard of it. No one had. I worked there for 6 years, and no floor plans, no guard logs, no blueprints. Nothing ever mentioned a Cell 0. I didn't go back right away. But by the third night, I stopped sleeping again. And on the fifth, I stopped trying. By the seventh, I was already pulling into Hollow Creek's parking lot. I don't remember the drive. The prison looked worse than ever, like it had continued rotting without me. Every brick oozed black grime. The air smelled like burned hair and bleach. I stepped through the front gate and immediately noticed something was different. There was no resistance, no moaning pipes, no flickering lights, just silence, like it had been waiting. Inside, the walls were covered in numbers, written in charcoal, blood, and something else I didn't want to identify. They weren't random. -5, -3, 0, always 0, always in the center. I followed the trail deeper than I ever had, deeper than I thought the prison even went. A stairwell I'd never seen open behind a supply closet. It spiraled downward, tight, suffocating, carved directly into the foundation. The walls were moist, breathing. The air got thicker the farther I descended. At the bottom was a corridor. No lights, no cells, just one door. Heavy, bolted, unlabeled, except for a single marking scratched deep into the metal. 0. I didn't want to use the key, but my hand moved on its own. The key slid in perfectly. The door didn't creak. It didn't scream. It sighed and opened. The room inside wasn't like the rest of the prison. No bars, no concrete, no smell of mildew or rot. It was white, blindingly white. Soft padded walls like an asylum cell. No windows, no vents, no furniture, except for a mirror, standing upright in the center, and a man, sitting in front of it. He looked like me, older, gaunt, pale, eyes sunken so deep they were nearly hollow. He didn't acknowledge me at first, just stared at the mirror like it was a TV screen. When he spoke, his voice was dry as dust. You finally made it. Who are you? I whispered. He didn't turn. You already know. I took a step forward. Are you me? I was, he said, before you left, before you broke the loop. I didn't understand. What loop? The prison, he said softly. It doesn't just trap the dead. It traps time, memory, identity. Every time someone enters it, they split. A reflection is born, a version that never leaves. He finally looked at me. His eyes were gone, replaced with mirror glass. You escaped, Mark, but you left me behind. I backed up. No, I made it out. I didn't mean to leave anything. I just wanted to survive. He smiled, something brittle and jagged, and I wanted to exist. The mirror behind him flickered, like a screen turning on. I saw scenes, moments from my time inside Hollow Creek, but they were wrong. In these versions, I never escaped. I died in D-Block. I hung myself in the janitor's closet. I vanished into the mirror hallway. 1,000 deaths, 1,000 outcomes. But this, he said, gesturing to the room, this is where all versions end. This is where they keep us. I shook my head. I'm not part of this place anymore. He stood. You never left. You just swapped places. The Mark who escaped was never you. You're mine. You're the copy that didn't make it out. The door slammed behind me. Locked. He stepped closer. You're not real anymore. His voice echoed, too loud for the room. You're a memory of a man who thinks he lived. I ran at the door, slammed it with my fists. No response. No sound. The room swallowed everything. He reached out and touched my shoulder. and everything around me vanished. Now I was standing outside again, in the parking lot. Morning sun in the sky, birds chirping, like nothing happened. I blinked. Had I imagined everything? But my hand was clenched, and inside was a key, still marked 0. I looked toward the prison, and it was gone. Not crumbled, not destroyed, gone. A flat field of grass stood in its place, untouched. I got in my car and drove until I couldn't anymore. Checked every map, every satellite image, every record. No trace of Hollow Creek existed, not even in historical records, like it had been erased from reality, or like it had never been there. I tried to move on again. New town, new job, but sometimes I see people watching me in crowds. Faces that don't quite match, eyes that reflect too much. And some nights, I wake up in a white room, just for a second, with a mirror in front of me, and someone watching from the other side. They never speak. They don't have to. I know what they're waiting for, because eventually I'll go back. Eventually, I'll be the one locked in cell 0, and someone else will walk out wearing my face. The returners. It's been 6 months since Hollow Creek vanished. I've changed my name, moved across the country. I avoid mirrors now, never sleep near one. Sometimes I cover reflective surfaces with black cloth, just in case. But the thing about reflections is they don't stay put. They come looking. It started again on a Monday. I was working at a hardware store, low profile, mindless hours. It felt safe, even boring. Until that morning when a customer came in, an old man, hunched and pale, his clothes dusty, streaks of grime under his nails. He didn't say a word, just shuffled through the aisles, dragging his feet. I asked if he needed help, but he ignored me, and then I saw the number scratched onto the back of his hand. -3. I dropped the box I was carrying. When I looked up again, he was gone. I checked the cameras, rewound them 3 times. There was no old man, but my name tag was gone from my chest, replaced with a different one. It read, G. Harrow, inmate supervisor. I hadn't touched it. When I went to the break room to catch my breath, every photo on the bulletin board was wrong. Our store manager, Sarah, she looked older, like she'd aged 30 years. The stock boy, Kyle, he was standing in front of Hollow Creek, in a guard uniform. And me, there was a photo of me on the far end, standing in a white room, smiling like I was at peace. Except my eyes were mirrors. I didn't quit. I ran. That night, I went back to my apartment and packed everything. I was going to disappear again, start over in another country, if I had to. But when I opened my door, someone was standing in the hallway. Not just someone, me. Same face, same body, but no emotion, just a dead stare. He raised a hand and pointed behind me. I turned. The hallway inside my apartment was gone, replaced with a narrow corridor, rusted, dimly lit, with peeling gray walls and water dripping from the ceiling. I recognized it immediately. D-Block, Hollow Creek. No, I whispered. You're not real. But he didn't answer. He walked into my apartment, and I saw his eyes flash like broken mirrors. When I tried to follow him, the hallway stretched, grew longer, darker. I lost my bearings instantly. When I blinked again, I was standing in a rec room. Concrete floors, graffiti-covered walls, a busted pool table. I was back inside. The prison had pulled me in again, except this time it wasn't empty. People were walking the halls, silent, shambling, dressed in inmate uniforms, but all of them had faces that I recognized. They were people I'd seen over the years in real life. A bus driver I used to wave at every morning. My old chemistry teacher, even my brother. They all had numbers on their foreheads. Negative numbers. -7, -12, -1. They didn't speak, didn't blink, just moved in slow, hypnotic patterns, like echoes stuck on repeat. A loud clang snapped my attention forward. A gate opened across the room, and something stepped through. It wasn't like the others. This one was aware. He was tall, dressed in a pristine uniform. prison warden's attire, black and crisp. His face was carved like stone, pale and cracked down the center, like a porcelain mask. His eyes glowed faintly white, like they'd seen every memory I'd ever buried. "The returners," he said, his voice like 1,000 whispers overlapping. "They're looking for balance." I took a step back. "Balance. They were sent back in your place. You left too soon. You broke the loop. Now they bleed through the cracks." He walked closer, and the inmates behind him followed in perfect sync. They're echoes of what should have remained. They only exist because you defied the order. What do they want? I asked. His smile was a fracture of teeth and shadows. They want their place back. The lights flickered violently. For a moment, the whole room shifted. I saw a world outside, a hospital room, machines, a heart monitor. I was in the bed, pale, dying. My brother was crying beside me. The doctor was shaking his head. And then the scene faded again back to Hollow Creek. "What was that?" I asked, panic setting in. The warden's face cracked wider. "You are not where you think you are." I backed away toward a side door. "I'm done with this. I'm not staying here." He raised his hand, and the walls themselves shuddered. A hole opened behind me, just large enough to slip through. "Run," he said, voice low and amused. "We'll be here when you're ready to remember." I dove into the opening. The world twisted again. I landed hard in a hallway lined with broken security cameras. Somehow, I was back in my apartment building. The lights were out, doors sealed shut. Everything smelled faintly of antiseptic and smoke. But I was alone, or so I thought. As I passed a mirror near the elevator, I caught a glimpse of movement. My reflection didn't follow me. It stayed behind and smiled. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the mirror for hours, waiting, hoping nothing would change. But at 3:13 a.m., something knocked on the glass. From the inside, a note appeared, scrawled in fog. "We're still here." I covered it, threw a sheet over it. But I couldn't stop thinking about what the warden had said. I'd seen my own death, or a version of it. Which one was real? Which me made it out? Because if I didn't survive Hollow Creek, then what am I? And if I did, beyond the glass? I didn't open the mirror. Not that night. Not the next. But it didn't matter. Because whatever was behind it was already here. I woke up on the kitchen floor 2 nights later with blood on my hands, and no memory of how I got there. The lights were flickering again. The digital clock on the oven blinked 3:13 over and over, stuck in a loop like a scratched record. Every window was sealed tight with something black and oily smear across the glass, as though someone had painted over the world outside. And the mirror? The mirror was gone. In its place was a rectangular hole in the wall, filled with thick, unmoving fog that pulsed slowly, like it was breathing. I didn't go near it. Not at first. But it whispered my name. I tried to block it out, played music, ran water, screamed into pillows, but nothing drowned it out. The whispers came from inside me sometimes. And when I looked in reflective surfaces, puddles, TV screens, even my own eyes in photos, I didn't always see myself anymore. Sometimes I saw the warden. Sometimes I saw that alternate version of me, the one with the hollow stare and glassy eyes. Sometimes I saw Hollow Creek itself, sitting there, waiting. Then one night I saw her. My mother. She died in a car accident when I was 17. There was no mistaking it. Her eyes, her soft voice. She appeared in the glass just long enough to say, "Come home, baby, we're waiting." And I broke. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a crowbar and smashed open the wall where the mirror used to be. Behind it was a stairwell. Cold, steel, leading down into blackness that didn't reflect any light. I hesitated, holding the flashlight tight. But the moment I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me, and the stairs began moving, down, farther than should have been possible. The walls around me groaned like bones shifting in the dark. Water dripped from somewhere above, and the air started to smell like mildew and something far worse. Something dead. Finally, the stairs ended in a narrow hallway, lined with doors on both sides. Each had a number carved into it. Not room numbers. Dates. February 12th, 2003. November 1st, 1997. June 19th, 2014. I recognized some of them. Dates of nightmares I remembered. Of trauma I'd buried. Each one was a piece of me. I reached out toward one door, trembling, and touched the handle. Instantly, the hallway exploded with whispers. Thousands of voices rose at once, overlapping, begging, screaming, accusing. You let us rot. We took your pain. You were supposed to stay. I ripped my hand back. That's when the lights failed. For a full 10 seconds, I was surrounded by nothing, except for the heavy, labored breathing of something massive behind me. When the lights flickered back, the warden stood at the end of the hallway. This time he was on fire. Not literally. His outline glowed like embers. Ash drifted from his shoulders like snow. And his voice was quieter now, slower. You have to choose, he said. Choose what? I asked, backing away. He gestured at the doors. Memory or reflection? Self or shadow? We can't both remain. Suddenly, the hallway twisted. The doors began opening one by one, revealing scenes from my life, but not as I remembered them. In one, I was a prisoner at Hollow Creek, being dragged by guards. In another, I was a guard, torturing inmates with methods I didn't even recognize. In another, I was dead, my body floating in a dark lake, face swollen, eyes wide open. I screamed, shutting my eyes, but the images burned behind my eyelids. Who am I? I whispered, shaking. The warden stepped forward and gently touched my shoulder. You were the janitor, the witness, the survivor, the one who walked away. His hand burned like ice. But in walking away, you left the doors open. I fell to my knees. Close them, I said. I don't know how. I don't know what I am anymore. He crouched beside me. You're the echo and the voice, the watcher and the watched. But most of all, he leaned close. You're the key. And just like that, the hallway collapsed inward, walls folding, ceiling vanishing, and I was standing in the mirror room again. Only now it was different. There were dozens of mirrors, each one showing a different version of me. Some were older, some younger, some monstrous, skin like ash, eyes like headlights. Some were screaming silently, banging on the inside of the glass. And in the center of the room was the real mirror, the one I'd first seen back in the abandoned prison. It stood tall and alone, its surface completely black. No reflection, nothing, just void. I stepped toward it, and the voices around me hushed. Then came the warden's voice, no longer behind me, but within me. Step through and seal what you started. What's on the other side? I asked aloud. Silence. Then, truth. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at my own absence. Then I reached out and touched it. The surface rippled, like water, and pulled me in. Darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, there was nothing. No thought, no time, no self. Then the world unfolded again. I was standing in a janitor's closet. Same uniform, same tools. But something was wrong. The air was different. Heavy. Still. I opened the door and stepped out into the prison hallway. Hollow Creek, but it wasn't abandoned. Lights were on. Buzzers hummed. Inmates wandered the halls, whispering among themselves. Guards moved stiffly, their faces familiar in the worst way. They were all me, every one of them. Different versions, playing different roles. Guard, prisoner, corpse. And every one of them turned to look at me at once. Welcome back, they said in unison. I turned to run, but behind me, the hallway was gone, replaced by mirrors, endless mirrors, each one showing a piece of me I never meant to see, each one whispering the same phrase, close the door. But I didn't know which one, and there were so many, room of 1,000 faces. The mirrors blinked. Yes, blinked. Like eyelids, they open and close, their surfaces rippling not like water, but like skin. Each one pulsed with a heartbeat, steady and slow, echoing through the space I stood in. I had no sense of time here. No sound except for my own shallow breaths and the quiet hum of something watching me. Something far too vast and ancient to name. There was no exit, only the mirrors. They stretched infinitely in every direction, above me, below me, left, right, behind. I could walk forward endlessly and never escape the reflections. And in each one a face. My face, but wrong. Some were older, their eyes yellow with madness. Others were children, pale and bruised, huddled in the corners of the frame. One version had no face at all, just a void of swirling static. Another grinned from ear to ear with sharpened teeth and bleeding gums. And all of them were looking directly at me. Not past me, not through me, at me. One mirror hissed. Not loud, but clear enough to make my skin crawl. I turned toward it, drawn in by some primal instinct I didn't understand. In that mirror was a version of me I hadn't seen before. He was clean-shaven, wearing the janitor uniform, but his eyes were completely white. No irises, no pupils. His hands were pressed against the glass, blood trickling from his palms. When he opened his mouth, I felt it in my bones rather than heard it. You didn't close it. My throat dried up. Close what? He didn't answer. Instead, the mirror cracked. A fine webbing of fractures bloomed across the surface. And then, with a sound like ice breaking underfoot, it shattered. But the shards didn't fall. They hovered in midair, spinning slowly, revealing dozens of smaller reflections. Each one held a memory. My childhood room. The blood-slick floors of Hollow Creek. The burn scars on the warden's face. My mother's last breath in the hospital. And beneath them all, the basement. The place I was never supposed to find. I stepped forward and immediately sank. The floor was no longer solid. I plunged through glass like it was syrup, tumbling into darkness, the whispers rising louder around me. The key. He left the door open. It was always you. When I hit the bottom, I didn't land on ground. I landed in cell 14. Same rusted bed. Same chalk drawings on the wall. Same blood-smudged words. Do not look. Only now I remembered. I'd been in this cell before. As a child. I remembered the cold iron door slamming shut behind me. I remembered the flashlight dying. I remembered screaming for hours while the shadows crawled across the ceiling like insects. But worst of all, I remembered the face on the bed. It hadn't spoken then. Now it did. A voice like shredded paper whispered from beneath the rusted frame. You shouldn't have left me. I turned slowly, heart rattling in my chest. The bed was trembling. Long, bony fingers wrapped around the edge. Blackened nails. Pale skin. Something crawled out, slowly, painfully, joint by joint. It was me again, but smaller, younger. Eyes gouged out, mouth sewn shut with wire, breathing in short, wet gasps. I reached out and touched my leg, and I remembered everything. The mirrors, the prison, the doors, the mistake. I'd come to Hollow Creek when I was 7, not as a janitor, not even as a visitor. I was born here. My father had been a guard, my mother a nurse. I was raised among locked cells and night terrors, never allowed outside. When the riot started, they hid me away in cell 14, told me to stay quiet, told me not to look at the mirrors. But I had looked, and that's when they found me. The inmates, the others, the shadows. They made a deal. They said I could live if I kept the door open. And I did. I grew up and forgot. But they didn't. They waited until I came back, all grown up, pretending to be a janitor investigating the ruins of a prison I'd never truly left. I knelt beside the child me and reached out. I'm sorry, I said. He only smiled, and then melted into dust. Cell 14 dissolved with him. The floor crumbled. I dropped again into the core of Hollow Creek, where time bent and breath didn't matter, where the real door waited. It was massive, 20 feet high, made of iron and bone, pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Runes carved into the surface, twisted constantly, refusing to settle into any known language. Chains held it closed. Except one chain had snapped. The door was open an inch. From that sliver, Black fog poured like steam. Whispers turned to screams. Faces flickered in the mist, twisted, suffering, endless. Arms reached out, searching, clawing at the air. That's what I had released. That's what I needed to seal. But I didn't know how. And I wasn't alone anymore. The inmates were here. Dozens. Hundreds. All dead. All walking. Some with eyes. Some without. Some missing limbs. Some crawling. Some floating inches above the ground. Their mouths open in silent wails. And leading them, the warden. Only now he had my face. He raised a finger and pointed at me. You opened it. You seal it. I backed away. No, I can't. I don't remember how. You never forgot. You chose not to remember. The inmates began to chant. Close the door. Close the door. Close the door. I screamed. I don't know how. Then I felt it. In my pocket. Heavy. Familiar. The same rusted key from the janitor's closet. The same one I'd thrown away. It was back. I pulled it out and held it up. The warden nodded once. I walked forward, every step a battle against the wind and the screams and the fear boiling in my chest. I pushed the key into the heart of the door. It resisted. It fought. But I twisted and turned and screamed. And as the door slammed shut, every light went out. The whispers stopped. The faces vanished. The inmates crumbled to ash. And I was alone. Really, truly alone. No mirrors. No shadows. Just silence. And the key in my hand turning to dust. What comes after? I woke up on the cold floor of cell 14. No screaming. No whispers. No blood dripping from the ceiling or eyes in the walls. Just silence. The kind that makes your own heartbeat sound too loud. The kind that presses in from all sides, like the world is holding its breath. My fingers twitched against the cracked concrete. I was whole. I was alive. The key was gone. So was the door. I stood slowly. Nothing moved. I stepped into the corridor, half expecting the inmates to be waiting, their hollow faces twisted into grins. But there was no one. The corridor stretched out endlessly in both directions, bathed in dull, flickering light from overhead bulbs that hadn't worked in decades. I was back in the real prison. Or so I thought. I found the janitor's closet, my old flashlight, my mop, the half-eaten sandwich I'd left on the counter the day before. It was as if the nightmare had never happened. But something was wrong. I felt it in the air, like the walls were breathing, like the prison wasn't quite empty. I had sealed the door, but I wasn't sure what side of it I had sealed myself on. As I walked through the corridors, memories flooded in. The whispers, the other versions of me, the mirror realm, and the promise I had made long ago, when I was still a child trapped in this place. I had made a deal. I promised to keep the door open, and I broke it. Now I wondered if the prison was punishing me for that betrayal or saving me. Room after room I searched. No signs of life. No echoes of the undead. Just dust and silence and the distant hum of something I couldn't see. Eventually, I reached the front gates. They were open, not just unlocked, wide open. Daylight poured through them, harsh and blinding. I squinted, stepping forward, bracing for some monstrous reveal, an army of the dead, the warden's twisted form waiting with judgment in his pale eyes. But it was just a field, a flat stretch of dirt and grass, trees swaying gently in the breeze. I walked out slowly. Every step was a question. Was this real? Was I free? The further I got from Hollow Creek, the lighter I felt, like something was being peeled away from me, layer by layer. By the time I reached the edge of the property, I couldn't even remember what my own name was, only that I had once been something else, someone else. I turned back. The prison was gone, just an empty hill where it should have stood. No buildings, no fences, no gates, just wind and silence, and an ache in my bones I couldn't explain. I kept walking, for hours, maybe days. I didn't get tired. I didn't get hungry. I just walked. Eventually, I found a road and a sign, Welcome to Fairwood. Population, 4,102. It looked normal. Too normal. Houses, stores, People laughing on sidewalks. I stepped into the town with cautious feet, half expecting the sky to tear open or the ground to swallow me whole. But nothing happened. I bought a coffee at a corner shop. I sat on a bench and watched cars pass by. No one looked at me. No one saw me. And that's when I realized I wasn't really here. Not fully. I was a ghost now. Some part of me was still in Hollow Creek. Maybe always would be. Maybe that's what the prison really was. A place that kept parts of you, pieces you didn't realize you were losing until it was too late. I tried to talk to people, tried to make conversation, but they never answered. They never turned their heads. It was like I didn't exist. And maybe I didn't. Maybe I had walked out of that prison, but left my soul behind. The last time I looked in a mirror, I saw nothing at all. No reflection. No light in my eyes. Just empty glass, waiting for something to return. That's when I knew. The inmates were never the ones truly trapped. I was, and I still am, because late at night, when the wind dies down and the shadows stretch long, I hear the door again. That terrible groaning sound, like bones grinding together, like something ancient shifting. And I know one day it's going to open again. And this time it won't be me walking out. It'll be something else, something worse, something that remembers my face. And when it does, I'll be waiting, because Hollow Creek never forgets. And the janitor always comes back. And